Today we're going to look at how a bill becomes a law, and I just got to warn you in advance. Some of it's pretty complicated, so I might gloss over little teeny bits, but you're going to absolutely get the basic gist of what happens. This is everything that happens, and yeah, that's crazy complicated. Um, and but I want you to still be able to get a sense of what happened. So if you want to like really get all the details, then you just pause this slide for a second. But basics are that the United States Congress, as well as the New Mexico State Legislature, are divided into two parts. You have the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives is in both the case of the United States and New Mexico is the larger body, meaning that there are more representatives than there are senators. In the United States Congress, your representatives are based upon the population of your state, and so every state gets two senators. So it just kind of that's how it splits. In order for a bill to become a law, it must pass both of those chambers, both the House and the Senate, and then be signed by the executive, whomever that is. So if we're talking about the federal government, then the executive is the president. If we're talking about the state government, governor, municipal government, you have a mayor. So it has to be signed by the executive. Now, each chamber of Congress, the House and the Senate, are divided into committees, and those committees are focused around specific topics because the Congress has to deal with so many issues that there's just no way that the full Senate or the full House could debate every single one of those issues. So they divide them out and they chunk them out and they say, all right, you're going to have a committee here that's going to look at the environment, and you're going to have a committee over here that's going to look at the military, and you're going to have a committee over here that looks at like foreign relations, relationships with other countries and stuff like that, right? Economic stuff. So you have all of those different committees, and they look at bills just from those specific topic areas, and they have to pass those they have to pass out of the committee before they can even go and visit the chamber. So every committee has a chairperson, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and that person wields a really tremendous amount of power. And then each chamber has a leader, right? So the Senate has a leader, and the House of Representatives has a leader. The leader of the House of Representatives is called the Speaker of the House. The leader of the Senate is the Senate Majority Leader. Now, there's another term, President of the Senate, but that's a ceremonial position. That position does not wield any power. It's the Senate Majority Leader. And whichever political party has the majority in each chamber determines who the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader are going to be. So, we introduce a bill. A member of Congress submits the proposed bill to the office of either the Senate Majority Leader or the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and then it is sent to a committee to be debated. And like I said, the bill is going to be sent to probably the most relevant committee for. So if you had a bill about trying to help veterans, you're probably not going to send that to something that's looking at the environment, right? And vice versa. So you find the appropriate committee, you send it to that committee, and now the committee it's up to the people and the representatives and their staffs on the committee to do research and then form opinions and listen to witnesses offer testimony describing why they think something is good or bad. And then eventually there will be a vote. So the committee votes to either send the bill to the floor or to kill it. So if the bill passes the committee, then it gets sent to the main chamber. So if it's a Senate committee and it passes, then it goes to the Senate floor to be debated and then passed or not passed. So if a bill doesn't get out of committee, that's it. Boom, it's dead. There's going to be no more conversation about that particular bill. So let's say it passes and then it goes to the floor. Once it's on the floor, and this is a metaphorical term, on the floor, on the Senate floor, on the House floor, it doesn't literally mean on the ground. Then the chamber, several things could happen, and the leader of the chamber, the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader, has a tremendous amount of power over this process. So they could vote after having a long debate. They could vote without having any debate at all. If it's like a relatively insignificant thing, they can do what's called a voice vote, where they literally say like everyone in favor say aye, and then you hear everybody say aye. or that there's not going to be a vote at all. The majority leader or the Speaker of the House just decided not to bring the bill to the floor at all, um, which is very frustrating for everybody. So once the bill, so now let's say it passes, and it's a Senate bill, so it passes the Senate. Um, because the bill has to be passed in both chambers, let's say it passes the Senate, then it has to go to the House, and the House has to pass it, or the House has to pass something very similar to it. And then there's another committee where they take, all right, this is the House of Representatives version, and this is the Senate version, and now we're going to mash them together, and we're going to make sure that they have the identical language because it has to be literally the identical wording in both bills. So they mash them together, they go back to the House, and they go back to the Senate, they get voted on, and if they get passed again, then they go to the executive to either be signed into law or to get vetoed. So if the president or the governor or the mayor, if they sign the bill, then that's it, and it's a law, and there we are. If they don't like the bill and they say, I don't want this to be a law, then they can veto it, and they can just say, nope, sorry, we're not going to do this law, and then it gets sent back to Congress. Now that's not just the end of the line, because we have this whole like checks and balances thing. So if Congress really, really likes the bill, even though the president vetoed it, then they can override the president's veto. But that's not just a simple majority. They have to have 2/3 of the people in the House and the Senate vote to say, yeah, we want to keep. So it's very hard. It's very hard to get anybody. It's very hard to get 2/3 of Americans to agree on anything, like anything. So getting 2/3 of our representatives to agree to override a veto is very, very rare. It happens, hasn't happened at the presidential level in a very long time. So our founding fathers didn't really believe in political parties. They saw them as dangerous. Nevertheless, by the 1830s, we had organized ourselves into political parties, and those parties evolved into the modern Democratic and Republican Party. The way that that impacts the legislature is that whichever party has the greatest number of seats in that chamber, right? So the House or the Senate, then that party controls that chamber, and that party's priorities and values are the ones that get emphasized. And increasingly in the modern era, the opposing party is pretty much completely sidelined. There used to be more bargaining, and there used to be more what's called bipartisanship, where both parties agree on something, but that very rarely happens anymore. And so, it's more about the exercise of power. And the way that that power gets exercised is that the party in power in that chamber decides what bills are going to be brought up and what bills are not going to be brought up. So, if the Republicans control the chamber, then bills that are prioritized by the Democrats are just not going to be brought forward. Usually, if your political party has had a really good election and controls both chambers of the Congress and the presidency, then that party's values get turned into law. And so 10 years ago, which is the last time the Democrats had that, where they controlled both houses and the presidency, they passed what we call Obamacare. They did healthcare. That was their big thing that they wanted to do. And in 2017, when the Republicans had what they call the trifecta, so the House and the Senate and the presidency, they passed a huge tax cut that benefited corporations and millionaires. So again, that's just sort of an example of how each party prioritizes the things that it believes in the most. Unfortunately, when the Congress is split, as it is right now, almost nothing gets done, because the Senate will pass bills right now that Republicans prefer, and Democrats in the House of Representatives pass bills that Democrats prefer. And so then there's very little reconciliation, and there are rare instances in which that then gets turned into law. So that is the process by which bills become laws here in the United States.